A reminder to Singaporeans to put their national identity first when using ethnic ties to engage in business and friendship in other countries such as China and India. Senior Minister of State for Foreign Affairs Sim says that it's important even when dealing with countries with close ties. Ms Sim was referencing the foreign interference law, which was recently invoked for the first time against an individual. The Singaporean businessman had links with Chinese organizations and regularly contributed to and was featured in foreign and local Chinese media. Ms Sim says that from the MFA's perspective, Singapore Chinese civic and business leaders are welcome to contribute actively to the discourse on the country's foreign policy. But she highlights the importance of understanding Singapore's core interests, underpinned by a rules-based international order.
文化认同不等于国民认同。以新加坡华族人士为例，我们既是新加坡公民，也是新加坡华人，不是华侨。只要充分了解以上3点，本地华社人士、社团、商会便可以在建立合作共赢的国际关系中发挥积极有效的角色。
And for more, we have in studio today Dr. Vivian Balakrishnan, Minister for Foreign Affairs.
Good evening, Dr.
Hi, good evening.
It's good to see you. So the Israel-Hamas conflict, it featured very strongly in Parliament today. What would you say to those who perhaps are still unconvinced about Singapore's neutrality in this matter?
Well, the first thing I would say is that the real question is not neutrality. The real question is what is in Singapore's national interest. And we had an extensive discussion in Parliament today, and I would say the following. First, because we are at risk, we have to call out terrorism. Wherever, whenever, whatever pretext, whatever justification, whatever circumstance, we have to call it out. And we did. Because what happened on the 7th of October was a blatant, a flagrant act of terror. And as I said, we called it out for our own sakes, because we are at risk. Second, I said, if Singapore is ever attacked, we too would assert the right of self-defense. And therefore, when we said Israel has a right, it was also with a view on what we would do or have to do if we were ever faced with such a situation. Third point is, we also have been reminding everyone, and in particular the Israelis, that anyone who exercises that right of self-defense has to comply with international law, the Geneva Convention, international humanitarian law. And that's why today I stated for the record that in our view, Israel's military response has now gone too far. These are statements that reflect Singapore's position and Singapore's national interest. So it's not about neutrality or balance, it's about what is in our own interest. Now, the other very important dimension I was trying to put across today is that we are, by definition, multiracial, multilingual, multireligious. You know, diversity is hard-coded in our DNA. That it is a design feature, it is a strength, but it is also a vulnerability. And I was using our reactions to the conflict in Gaza as a worked example to tell all Singaporeans, look, there's going to be a wide diversity of views. Some strongly held, some less so. The key challenge for us as Singaporeans is respect to each other, affirm and recognize that we can have such strongly held views, but do not import foreign quarrels and do not let that divide and polarize us. I was very cheered today that in Parliament, MPs, not just from the PAP, from the Workers' Party, and including the nominated MPs, we all arrived at consensus. And I hope that that also will help engender a consensus in the larger Singapore community, not identity of views or perspectives, but that we can live with each other peacefully and in fact show the world how to live with such diversity. And that will be Singapore's contribution to a world which has quite frankly become far more dangerous.
Yeah, and I suppose, we've seen and we've reported, tens of thousands of lives lost because of the
terrible.
conflict. And you have also announced a third tranche of aid. Can you just give us a bit more details if it's going to be similar to previous tranches?
Well, this time we intend to work with our friends in Jordan. I just spoke to the Jordanian foreign minister yesterday. And we are particularly focused on food and on medical supplies, because based on my interactions with him and the information we've been receiving, that is the critical need. So we'll make more announcements in the next couple of days. But we do want to help. This expresses, again, the Singapore spirit at its best. And, rather than just get angry, let's get active. Let's do something, and do something constructive and helpful. And in fact, it also reflects that Singapore has excellent ties across the entire political spectrum in the Middle East. This, again, is a strength. And it is a position of respect which we have not achieved by saying, yes, sir, 3 bags full to everyone who wants us to agree with them on all counts. That's not the way we operate. But they know we do careful calculations and assessments of our national interests. And we do want to work with our partners overseas, but in a respectful, honest, and constructive way. And I think this is the posture and the habit that we have to continue in Singapore.
Well, historically, Singapore has supported the Palestinians, for decades, in a sense. You also mentioned the $10 million enhanced technical assistance package. That was first put together in 2013.
Yes.
Sort of enhanced in 2016. It is meant to go towards building a Palestinian state. Can you share with us, Dr. Balakrishnan, how far that amount has been used and in what way? I know there are courses and so on that have benefited officials.
Yes, and they have come. Look, let's take a step back. Singapore believes the only way there's going to be lasting peace is if there are 2 states. Israel entitled to live in peace and security, and the Palestinian people with a right to self-determination in their own state. But, and this is a very big but, you're not going to achieve this until and unless there is direct, honest negotiations between the Israelis and the Palestinians. It's not something you can impose from outside. So our position is that we're friends with both. We hope they will arrive at a formula. I don't know when that will be. In the meantime, we be helpful, we be constructive, we be honest, and we have, I can honestly say, a good relationship with both sides. I've been to Israel twice. I've also been to Ramallah twice. And I say the same thing in Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, and in Ramallah. And again, that's the secret for Singapore's foreign policy, that we are consistent, we are reliable, we are trustworthy. And that gives us access, that gives us relevance, and that gives us a role. Not something to be taken for granted.
I believe there have been calls, some people calling for Singapore to sever ties with Israel, for instance. And you have responded strongly to say that it's not constructive, it's not in Singapore's interest to do so. So in a way, this whole Israel-Hamas issue has become a platform for us to talk about this openly and to show Singaporeans how diplomacy works.
Yes. No, and I explained at length in Parliament, and the opposition agreed with us. As I said, we all arrived at consensus that no, we will not sever ties. In fact, that's not the way we conduct foreign policy. When you have a problem, when you have a disagreement, in fact, all the more so, you need to maintain an open channels of communication. Explain, try to make compromises if it can, try to arrive at a consensus if possible, and ultimately make things better. On this question of discussions and interaction, I've always been a believer that you want to have respectful, rational, calm, and deliberate discussions which generate light and understanding and not generates heat. And sometimes, and we witness this in many other countries, demonstrations, arguments which generate more heat than light, which generate more distrust rather than understanding and, congruence in the center. So this is our Singapore style. It does not mean we are shutting down views or that we don't recognize the diversity of views. I think it can be done in our Singapore way. We may not be perfect, but we will keep evolving and improving it. And I think it is possible to have these real conversations. But it has to be done in appropriate circumstances.
In a constructive way.
And in a constructive and respectful way.
Yeah.
I was frankly very cheered by what happened in Parliament today because you could see that everyone said what they honestly believed, but we all converged in a Singaporean way.
Dr. Balakrishnan, thank you very much for coming into the studios and sharing your thoughts with us on this. Foreign Affairs Minister there, Dr. Vivian Balakrishnan.